I would say that this fight beats the majority of fights that take place in Walmart parking lots, but it's going to be by a narrow margin as we have the former UFC heavyweight champ, Fabricio Werdum.
These are two all-time greats, Craig. Show some respect.
Vai Calvalo taking on the Mauler Alexander Gustafsson. And I want to start it here. Fabricio Werdum, I get, he had that wild fight against Fedor where, Fedor was going to run away with that win. Werdum looked amazing. His run in the UFC, amazing. He fought, Stipe Miocic in Brazil, and you might have thought Werdum looked a little too complacent, a little too glad to be there. The worst part was when he turned his head and old Stipe just punched him into oblivion and knocked him out in front of that hometown crowd and looked amazing. And for Werdum, he built himself back up. He lost to Volkov. And then it's been weird because, he had the USADA suspension. We called him a lock of the night against Alexei Oleinik because really it was like, hey, remember how good Werdum was?
Yep.
And Oleinik wasn't on a great spell of his own. I know he had a win over Maurice Green, but what's that? And Werdum came out and we said, he looked like a bag of milk. And yeah, up here in Canada, we have bags of milk. And we drink them out of the milk bags. And that's what Werdum looked like. And his striking looked awful. And
he looked labored in that fight. The only thing, though, that I will say, he did out-grapple Oleinik. And that was the thing. Oleinik is a completely lights-out grappler. But Werdum, every time the fight did go to the mat, he had very good success against him. The thing was, Werdum seemed overwhelmed in that fight. And if Alexei Oleinik on the feet is overwhelming you, Alexander Gustafsson, I don't care what version it is of him, he should be able to beat you on the feet. Because we know what we're going to get with Gustafsson at this point in his career. It was kind of... Gustafsson reminds me of a Carlos Condit. Because I really want to cheer for Alexander Gustafsson, and I really want him to be that version that I knew that he could be back in the day.
Like that Glover fight.
Exactly. It's just, at this stage in his career, we don't really know what we're going to get. Because the the Anthony Smith fight, I was extremely confident Gustafsson was going to be able to win that. Just because, yeah, he lost to John Jones, but it was still Gustafsson. You know what he's going to be able to do. And he's a huge power threat. He's got really good footwork. He did all those things, but then the second the fight hit the mat, he just looked completely lost. And that's the case with Gustafsson. Because, again, former favorite fighter, I would say. Now I don't really have favorite fighters, just kind of like everybody. But Gustafsson has a really good move to get out of takedowns. He's got great takedown defense. He's got a great first get-up. The problem is, after that first really good get-up, he kind of just waits on his back. He doesn't really have a lot of urgency to get back up to his feet. And that's the only part of this fight that does concern me for him. Because Fabricio Werdum, I don't care if he's 75 years old. He'll be able to submit the majority of even black belts in the world, much less just regular grapplers. And Alexander Gustafsson, for as good of a grappler as he is defensively, he's not on Fabricio Werdum's level. So although Werdum fought like he was 60 in his last fight, I think he does have that one huge X factor that if this fight hits the mat for any period of time, I think the advantage that he has over Gustafsson on the ground is much more dangerous than the advantage Gustafsson has over Werdum on the feet.
This is it. I get it. Out of the picks over on Tapology, there's over 969, 88% Gustafsson, 66% by knockout. He's a big favorite. He's about a minus 350 favorite, 345. Werdum plus 267, 270. You brought it up. Gustafsson has 85% takedown defense at light heavyweight. So
I think it'll translate.
He's been off for a long time. His last win was 3 years ago over Teixeira. So you think about it in the back of your mind. He looked amazing. He had a video game combination to finish that fight. And then he took, there was some time off. The Jones fight, he got finished in that fight. It was TKO, but still, he got finished. And then he got finished against Anthony Smith. For Werdum...
By submission, too. If Anthony Smith can submit you, what do you think Fabricio Werdum can do to you, sir?
Werdum gets finished by Volkov 2 years ago, gets USADA suspension, comes out and loses a split to Oleinik. And listen, I'd be lying if I said I didn't put money on Werdum to beat Oleinik in that fight. I did, and again, it was a split.
Craig's been bit by Werdum a couple of times.
I thought Oleinik won that fight. I didn't think it was a split. I thought Oleinik won it pretty handily. It's tough, man. It really is, because you look at the odds and they're so far in favor of Gustafsson. You look at the fan voting, it's so far in favor of Gustafsson. And I know everybody comment. Let me know what you think about this one. Please let us know what you think about this one. But it seems to me, and I threw it out there on the YouTubes, because we try and use that community section as much as we can. So make sure you're checking that out, because we throw the votes out there, the polls, we throw some pictures out there. I asked for locks of the night. There's a lot of people going with Gustafsson as a lock of the night. I wouldn't go that far. This isn't like the, money in the bank type of pick. I'm going to go with Gustafsson, But you do have to worry about that ground game, because if Anthony Smith, that at one point in time, not that far away, fought at 85, came up to 205 and submitted you, you have to worry about Fabricio Werdum. Even if it's the guy that looks like he was eating potato chips on the couch for 2 years, you still have to worry about him.
I agree 100%. And with Werdum, though, the good thing for Gustafsson, his takedown defense is so good. Werdum's not the best wrestler in the world. Gustafsson needs to be on this bike for the majority of this fight. And I know that's his game plan throughout any of his fights anyways. He's got that really good foot movement. He's got that really good head movement. And his boxing is pretty much second to none. Really, I mean, Stipe would probably be able to outbox him at the heavyweight division. But other than that, I mean, it's those two for pure boxing. Gustafsson's power, I don't know if it's going to translate to heavyweight. That's my problem with everyone thinking that he's going to win by TKO KO.
Here's part two. He doesn't really plan on being a heavyweight. Or so he says. He doesn't plan on having a future at heavyweight. Oh, well, maybe I'll move back down to 205. It's weird.
It's a guy who also retired after his last fight, too, and called out Luke Rockhold right after he got knocked out by Jan Blachowicz, which isn't a great look. Like, I never like it when fighters say, I'm retired, and then another guy who's a big name gets knocked out, and they're like, well, I could probably get that fight. Let me call that guy out. Not a great look for Gustafsson. I think he's going to win this fight. I'll make that clear right now. But every second I spend talking about this fight, I'm slowly talking my way into Fabricio Werdum somehow getting an upset win. Just because, again, the Gustafsson we saw against Anthony Smith, at least on the ground, looked kind of lost. And the Fabricio Werdum that we saw against Oleinik, although on the feet he looked lost, it wasn't like Oleinik, who I think has decent power at heavyweight. Not a vicious puncher by any means, but I think he has respectable power. Gustafsson's more of a volume guy. Yes, he gets knockouts, but when you look at the majority of his career, they come later in fights and they're throughout combinations. He has to land, 7, 8 punch combinations, then you go down with one of them. He might be able to do that against Werdum, but heavyweight Gustafsson, we just really don't know what to expect. Those videos that All-Star keep on putting out and pictures make him look thick and not in the best way possible.
It's like when Rufus Sport was putting out CM Punk videos. Underwhelming.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of describing it too, because Gustafsson, it looks like he does kind of want to stay at heavyweight from those pictures, just because, again, it's not like it's Gustafsson who's not cutting weight. It's Gustafsson at heavyweight, because he looks genuinely like a heavyweight in this fight. I think he's going to be able to get done. I think his takedown defense will be able to somewhat stifle Werdum. But even with Werdum, Damian Maia is the best at doing this. He goes for a takedown knowing that you're going to stuff it, just so that he can get you in his half guard and then he can sweep you from there. I don't know if Werdum is going to be able to do that against Gustafsson, but I do think it's probably something in the back of his mind that I'm going to go for these takedowns, and even if I don't get them, I might be able to create a scramble. Last thing from this on me, from Werdum, even in the Volkov fight, yes, I know we got finished by another tall, lanky striker similar to Gustafsson.
With blonde hair.
Don't know if you remember the first 2 rounds of that fight. Werdum had his back multiple times throughout that. And not that Volkov's this, dominant grappler by any means. I do think he is quite
not
similar.
Against Blades.
Not against Blades. I do think he is similar to Gustafsson in that respect. But if you're able to get Volkov's back for any period of a fight, if you can do that against Gustafsson, you're setting yourself up for a victory. So although I'm going with Gustafsson, there's enough red flags that I do think Werdum has a good chance of winning this.
Gonna go with Alexander Gustafsson as well. And I get it. Like, I get the fan voting. I get that you guys are calling it a lock. I get that the odds are where they are.
I'm just not there.
The thing that I will say that sides with all of that is the fact that, again, Verdum's last win, let's bring it up, was against Marcin Tybura. Almost 3 years ago. Marcin Tybura is, a bubble 15 guy at best in the UFC. And then before that, it was Walt Harris, who came in on,
2 hours
like a day's notice and gets submitted in a fight that he shouldn't have even been in. So take that for what it's worth. But Verdum's striking against Oleinik looked like absolute trash. And again, he could beat the piss out of me, so take that for what it's worth.
Craig, a former heavyweight champion would have a good chance.
But it didn't look up to the level that we've seen it before. So let me say that if Gustafsson can at least string together a semblance of what he looked like in the beginning of the Jones fight or the Teixeira fight for good measure, I think that Gustafsson wins this fight fairly easily. So I will say Gustafsson. Matt's going to go with Gustafsson. It's so interesting, and we're going to get kind of both of those things. So let us know in the comments what you think about this one. You're not going to want to miss the rest of our predictions for the card. 14 more picks, including extended look at Whittaker until in our main event. Matt, as we always say with Fight Night picks, let's get into it.